Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, how do you get replacement parts for old missiles? We go to the plant where they're made to bring you the answer. Also, is there a new attitude towards psychedelic treatments for post-traumatic stress and other ailments? Hear from two vets at the forefront. Plus, limber up there, trooper. We've got a feature on a group using combatives to help prior service members stay sharp. Finally, beards in the Air Force? Slow down there, mountain man. It's on the wish list, but there's a ways to go. We've got those stories and more on tap for you in the latest in news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon, here on Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Diana Stancy. What do you do when your missile needs a part that hasn't been manufactured since before the internet existed? In this case, the Pentagon turns to the craftsmen at the Letterkenny Army Depot, who have been maintaining and modernizing America's arsenal since 1942. For example, when the Patriot surface-to-air missile was initially fielded in 1984, no one envisioned them still being used 40 years later. Now, the system is expected to stay fielded until at least 2040. A feat largely made possible by the efforts of the artisans at Letterkenny, located in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. These craftsmen keep the most complex systems in the nation's arsenal up and running. Military Times' Todd South recently visited the depot to learn more.
So we're here at the Letterkenny Army Depot in south central Pennsylvania near Chambersburg. Nearly 20,000 acres of facilities have been around for more than 80 years, and shortly after the beginning of World War II. Ever since then, they've done maintenance and repair on major Army platforms, such as the Nike missiles, the Avenger missiles, and for more than 30 years now, the Patriot missile system, which has been key from everything from the Persian Gulf War to modern day, still being used actively across combat zones across the globe. Now, while the Patriot is almost 40 plus years old, it still's got some more years left in it. And this place maintains, sustains, and repairs specifically the Patriot, but also other systems such as the Hellfire, different power generation systems, and future systems coming online to replace the Patriot and others.
Here at Letterkenny, we are the Air Missile Defense Depot, long-range precision fire. We also do power generation, force provider, force sustainment, and all of the support systems that go with those weapon systems. So our artisans are multifunctional, multi-skilled. They do mechanical, electrical, and a lot of allied trades work as well. We have to be our own fabricators. We provide both electrical and mechanical pieces to support our production lines. Letterkenny has a long history. We have been an ordnance depot for 80 plus years. We started out as the Nike missile depot, and because Nike came with electronics, we started to repair electronics. As we transitioned from Nike, we transitioned to the Hawk missile, and from the Hawk missile to the Patriot missile. We've been the Patriot missile provider for roughly 30 years now for the Army, and we're preparing to transition to the Army's next lower tier air defense system, which is the Integrated Battle Command System and the lower tier air missile defense radar sensor. Our artisans about 1,200 strong. We currently support a peacetime joint force for air missile defense, power generation, and ground systems. However, that workforce is able to surge up in a time of war. So, right now, thank God, we're a nation at peace. If we go to war, we're able to transition those skills and use our factory's capacity to surge and provide surge capability, surge sustainment capability for the warfighter. So one unique thing about our artisan workforce is that we have both a large percentage of former military, about 40% of our workforce served across the military. We also have a multi-generational workforce. And so, we have families that have worked here at the depot over our 80-year history. And fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, they're deeply tied to the warfighter community. They are driven by purpose. They are public servants. We are a government-owned, government-operated organization. Many of our employees are former serving members of our military services. And we really have benefited from the fact that they are problem solvers. So a lot of people don't understand why the depots still exist. To be honest, I was in the Army for 12 years. I'd never even heard of a depot. I didn't understand what it was. People that have heard of depots think it's someplace that you send your equipment after it's been out in the field for 20 years. We are so much more than that. Really, we are the warm industrial base for the Department of Defense. So we're able to keep those skills warm in peacetime so that we can prepare for war and ramp up into our surge capability. So we carry the surge capability for the Department of Defense as well. And why you can't find that in industry and our commercial partners is because they're all about new manufacturing. They don't have, they don't carry necessarily surge capability. What they carry is production that generates profit. Here at the depot, we're driven by purpose. And so we try to make sure that we're providing a quality product to our warfighter and that we're maintaining those core skills throughout our artisan workforce so that when the nation calls, we are prepared and ready to answer. And we've done that time and time again.
When we return, it's time for psychedelics and jiu-jitsu, just not at the same time. Don't go away. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. A lot of veterans' health organizations offer aid through paths to reflection and serenity. But how about one that's a little bit combative? The We Defy Foundation has a unique approach to offering connection and healing to veterans with disabilities. They partner with jiu-jitsu gyms and get veterans involved in fitness and grappling training. We talked with a pair of reps from the group, including UFC fighter Connor Matthews, for more about the effort at the recent MCON conference. Check it out.
All right, how you guys doing? My name is Connor Matthews. I'm a UFC fighter and a prior U.S. Air Force combat controller. I'm here out at MCON, partnered with We Defy. We're running a jiu-jitsu event, a little competition, and I did a little expo myself. We're out here just trying to help veterans, connect martial arts to help with mental health. So anybody who's struggling with PTSD or just anything, or just want to train, our mission is to help guys train martial arts and use that to get over PTSD.
Tab Stacy with We Defy Foundation here at MCON Live. Our mission statement at our foundation is we're creating scholarships for disabled veterans, disabled combat veterans to train jiu-jitsu. And it's jiu-jitsu is our vehicle that gives them that finite being of sense of purpose, mental acuity, physical drive, and it's a tribe of community that we want us to be able to support more. I can speak to this myself, a veteran, served in the Air Force, was a combat controller, was in there, my career for about 5 years, came out and I was always looking for something. I'm a lifelong jiu-jitsu practitioner, been training for a little bit over 20 years, but I was searching for something and I was searching for what? Well, I found out I needed to search for a community. So it's a common thread or a common golden thread that many of our veterans are coming out of service. What does their post-service look like? Many of them find that in many vehicles today. One of the vehicles that we looked at is jiu-jitsu. Coming to a school, being part of a community, that community is going to drive accountability. It's going to drive mental awareness, mental challenges. It's going to drive physical capacity of what you need to be able to do to train on the mats for hours throughout the weeks. It provides leadership, regiment. It's going to provide that, what many of us in the services was looking for. Something that speared the core, something to drive them, just maybe that little extra element of like something's missing in my life. And now we bring them in and they'll be able to fill that gap. We create scholarships and then we will provide that first year's tuition for our approved athlete to come in. That will be a year's tuition, which on a national average is about $2,500. So what we will have is we'll have local events, fundraising events within said schools. We'll have regional events, and sometimes what we're working on is having national events to be able to create and raise these scholarships. We partner with small businesses and jiu-jitsu schools. They've come on board and they'll provide a safe and competitive place for our scholarship athletes to come in and train jiu-jitsu. Currently, we have somewhere around 978 schools within the United States. We have schools coming on board with us in Europe. We have schools in Guam and schools in Japan. Our idea is that we want to be able to provide you a school within about an hour's drive of where you live in. And if you're in a local area to where one of our schools or it's not an approved school, we'll work with you directly to get to that school to try to bring them on our board to widening our net to help you get a school. We Defy Foundation is blessed and excited to be here at MCOM Live. We're excited to be around so many other like-minded here and organizations here to support our veteran community. Please come by We Defy Foundation, learn more about our organization, come by our mats and get choked out maybe.
Just like no two veteran stories are the same, there is no one universal path to healing for those dealing with mental health wounds of war. One of the less used avenues for recovery is treatment with psychedelics, but some veterans are trying to open people's minds to their potential benefits. Two of those vets are DJ Shipley and Marcus Capone. Capone has led an effort in recent years to destigmatize the treatment, and Shipley has found success in their application. Both men are part of a new documentary called In Waves and Wars, and we heard from them at the MCON conference earlier this year. Have a look.
I struggled with PTSD for a long time. A lot of depression, a lot of opiates, a lot of everything else they were prescribing me, and I felt myself lost for about a decade, and I really couldn't come out of the funk. And fortunately, unfortunately, I was the only Navy SEAL that was dealing with that shit, the only one. And when it got really, really bad, like so bad you can't take another day of it, you guys made an infomercial about the psychedelic treatment and how much it saved you. In the raw transparency that you both showed, it changed my life.
So, you know, psychedelics in our society have such kind of a hippy-dippy connotation, which often runs completely counter to the squared-away military man or woman. Tell us a bit about when you realized psychedelics might be an option for you, and what was your initial reaction?
I don't know if doing psychedelics is going to do anything for me. I never did them growing up. I joined the Navy at 17, so I never got to experiment with any kind of psychedelics, and it was so foo-foo in my mind that I just never would I think about going to Mexico and doing psychedelics.
It was still 2017, and it was still a little unknown, and I'll call it a little bit weird. And I was scared to death to even talk about this because I was still working in banking. What are people going to think? Am I going to get fired? Are people going to think I'm weird? And we're sitting in this funeral home, and I'm just thinking, if we don't talk about this, we're going to be back in here.
I mean, I've known Marcus for over 20 years, and to see how he was and now how he is now, he's such a better version, a more controllable version, but it's that same guy that I knew the entire time, just more refined, more well-rounded. He was still that hunter, still that warrior class of people, but now he was controllable. I really want that, man. And, you know, we went in hook, line, and sinker, went down to Mexico, and it changed everything for me.
Can you kind of walk us through that first time you did it? You know, what were you ingesting? How were you ingesting it? How long did it last? And kind of what the kind of clinical environment was for it?
Very much a clinical setting, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels very organic, very natural. And when you lay back, that medicine takes a hold of you, and it's so powerful, you can't believe it's happening. It's such an intense experience. It's probably the first time, I know for me and for everybody else, you've never felt anything like that before. And when you come out of the medicine, I mean, we take it at 7, 8 o'clock at night, and you don't really come out of the medicine until noon the next day, and then you sleep all day long. Kind of processing, you wake up, you have a little bit to eat, and you go straight into integration. All the people that did the medicine with you, you're sitting around, you're sharing everything that came up. And the things that come up in those journeys are not what you thought it would be. I thought I'd be in a black helicopter, I'd be at Arlington, I'd be burying friends, and it wasn't any of that. It was childhood trauma, issues with my relationship with my wife, with my kids. It was a bunch of internal stuff I was struggling with that I had buried down so deep that I didn't know that was actually what was affecting me.
Psychedelics have been around for thousands of years. They were never recreational drugs thousands of years ago when they were used in these cultures to cure people from their mental health, their physical health, rites of passage. We kind of lost our way a bit in the 60s where they were abused as recreational drugs. However, the thousands and thousands of clinical trials and journals that were written on psychedelic treatments for mental health was never forgotten. And the government shut it down in 1970 because there was a lot going on, right? We had the Vietnam War, we had the war on drugs, and so this is the quickest way to shut it down. But now we're back, and now we have literally today, over 300 clinical trials worldwide on psychedelic therapy for depression, anxiety, PTSD, OCD, ADD, alcohol use disorder, opioid use disorder. So this is the future of mental health care as a tool.
You know, the federal government's kind of, as I understand it, kind of put a halt into psychedelics research for mental health. Are you hoping that'll change? Do you see any indication? And what do you think it'll take to change that, to get that to folks who need it, not only veterans, but also, you know, civilian America?
We actually went to the Capitol and tried to do some fundraising with a bunch of congressmen and senators and stuff like that. And ultimately what I told them at the panel, I was like, the wrong people are committing suicide. As soon as it happens to you, you're gonna stop and you're gonna make this happen.
Thanks.
As soon as you have somebody you know that's truly suffering, when you're high school quarterback, All-American, joins the Marine Corps, and you watch his struggle and his decline, and then you see him get better through this treatment, you'll start to back and support it. And ultimately, that's what we need.
Yeah.
We need more people to get better, more people to shout it from the rooftops and let the world know that this is a viable solution that will save thousands of people.
Thanks so much for your time. Thanks for sharing our story. We're really glad
thank you
to
so
hear
much for
about your
having me
journey.
No.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon on the floor here.
When we come back, how service members can set achievable financial resolutions for the coming new year. Don't go away. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. On this week's edition of Money Minute, Jeanette Mack from Navy Federal Credit Union is back with tips on how to create and achieve financial goals in the coming year.
Starting the new year with a commitment to prioritize your personal finances is a fantastic first step to improving your financial wellness. From tackling credit card debt to building an emergency fund, improving your finances can have a positive ripple effect across all areas of your life. But let's face it, life happens. And when reality hits, only about 9% of people actually keep their resolutions. To make your financial goals stick, you need a plan. Set achievable goals and be specific. Instead of saying spend less, aim to spend $50 less per month on, say, dining out. Focus on one goal at a time, like finding a credit card with a better interest rate. Make sure you include the why. Why do I want to do this? Maybe it's to save for a new car or pay off debt. Motivation is key. Keep your motivation alive with daily reminders or find an app that tracks your progress. If you haven't already, automate your savings and payments. The idea is out of sight, out of mind. Lastly, don't go it alone. Build a support network. Sharing your journey with family and friends can help boost your motivation and success. With all of this in mind, your new year can start off strong and stay that way.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get more coverage of military and defense topics, raise your periscope and scan the seas for militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more headlines. And to be the most up-to-date Guardian monitoring the deadly void of space, sign up for our early bird brief, compiled each morning to bring you the most recent headlines. Lastly, if social media is where you collect open source intelligence, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. And just like most junior troops, we're on TikTok, so go find us there as well. When we return, beards in the Air Force? It's a possibility. Find out more when we come back. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Diana Stancy. The fate of airmen's and guardians' facial hair could soon hang in the balance as a new measure opens up the possibility of beards for the air and space forces in coming years. This week, a draft of the annual defense budget included a mandate for the Air Force to study whether it can establish a pilot program that would allow airmen and guardians to grow beards. If the measure is adopted by Congress, the Air Force would be required to report to lawmakers by April on the feasibility of broadening shaving guidelines. The nemesis of military facial hair, skin-tight seal requirements for gas masks, will be part of the consideration, as well as whether allowing beards would harm or improve discipline and morale. Congress is still debating the broad provisions of the full defense budget. And this past week marked the 83rd anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor. To honor the occasion, veterans, members of the military, and the public gathered to commemorate those who fought there. A survivor of the infamous Japanese attack, 104-year-old Bob Fernandez, also took time to remember the events of that day.
But down and went boom! What? And I was mess cooking that day. So the guy said, "Let's go. We got to get out of here." And so we took off.
Fernandez was working as a mess cook on his ship, the USS Curtis, the morning of December 7th, 1941, and had plans to go dancing that night at the Royal Hawaiian Hotel in Waikiki. He brought sailors coffee and food as he waited tables during breakfast. Then they heard an alarm sound. and through a porthole, he saw a plane with a Japanese insignia fly by.
I felt kind of scared because I didn't know what the hell was going on. Didn't anybody else, I guess. And so that's the way it was, you know. Run for your life.
Fernandez fought back by handing ammunition to the ship's gun crews. The Curtis lost 21 men and had 60 wounded in the deadly surprise attack.
I had to go down below 3 decks to get to the magazine room. And that's where they had all the ammunition. And they were passing them out, so they passed them to me, and I passed them to somebody else, so we could pass them up to those big guns.
You lost a lot of good people.
Well, we lost a lot of good people, you know. They didn't do nothing, you know. But we never know what's going to happen in a war.
A Marine veteran who put an agitated subway rider in a chokehold on a New York subway has been acquitted in the man's death. A Manhattan jury cleared Daniel Penny of criminally negligent homicide charges. The verdict came after a more serious manslaughter charge was dismissed because the jury deadlocked on that count. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse where the decision was announced. The case arose from Jordan Neely's May 2023 death and became a prism for differing views about public safety, valor, and vigilantism. The 26-year-old Penny gripped Neely around the neck for about 6 minutes. Junior enlisted troops will see a 14.5% pay raise in 2025 under a deal negotiated by House and Senate leaders in this year's Defense Authorization Bill, a move that adds between $3,000 and $6,000 to younger service members' basic pay. The plan also includes a 4.5% pay raise for other troops, more than $2 billion in funding for new barracks and family housing, expanded bonuses and hiring incentives to boost the number in medical personnel in military healthcare facilities, and hikes childcare workers' salaries to improve availability at military bases. The quality of life moves, most of which were introduced by House lawmakers earlier this year, are designed to counter recruiting and retention problems in the ranks. The larger authorization bill still must be approved by the whole of Congress before the pay raise and other provisions can become law. And lawmakers will have to agree upon a new package to fund the larger paychecks before the end of the year. Well, that's all we have time for in this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.